Hi. Welcome to the gathering room. How are you doing today? It is very cold and windy where we are. I don't see the people popping up yet, but I suspect they are there already. As soon as I see people, I will introduce my lovely co-host, the Rowan.
Co-host. And here I was thinking I was merely a sidekick.
No, you were promoted.
I've been promoted.
Yes, to co-host.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. How you doing?
Aloha, Kathy Kozak. Just made that up.
My favorite doctor in Hawaii.
My favorite doctor in the world.
Maybe another doctor heard you say that.
Hey, they're pouring in. Hi, Jessica.
Donna, clipped in there in 30.
Donna. Hi, Geordie, representing from Melbourne. Hi, Karen. I'm trying to say names of sort of places.
Well, say the place names too. There was New Zealand. That always amazes me. Like the people are in New Zealand right now. They're there in New Zealand.
Hi, Tiffany from New Zealand. Hi, Adita from Toronto. Wendy from Guelph.
Wendy from Guelph.
Wendy from Guelph.
I still think that's a Dante's Inferno reference because he's all about the Guelphs. Dante in the Inferno. There are a lot of Guelphs.
It's a niche reference.
It's a niche reference. It's if you're like obsessed with the Divine Comedy.
Which everyone soon will be once they read Martha's upcoming book, The Integrity Clams.
Yeah, because nothing screams bestseller like basing a self-help book on an academic analysis of Dante.
It's not an academic analysis. It's not academic. It's funny and brilliant and change your life.
Magical. Oh, yes. I actually think that Dante had an enlightenment experience of some kind.
Sophie. Hi, Crystal from Portugal.
We have over 100 people, so I'm going to talk about what we're going to talk about.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to all of you guys who just weren't fast enough. I can't get it to you all, but you are welcome to the gathering room.
Very welcome.
And I'm going to get out of here and let you.
Thank you. Okay. So today, somebody asked last week, and I love it when you guys ask for topics because that way I can think of topics, and that is good. And somebody asked about feeling isolated and wanting to find people who are of one's own ilk. Ilk is a very important word if you're into crossword puzzles. And it means just people who are like you, who match your vibe, man. We're on your wavelength. And so I thought this week we would talk about it, if permitted by the weather, because we were going to have bad weather, supposedly. I saw in the middle of the week, we have a shopping list and we write things on it. If you run out of cheese or whatever, you put cheese on the shopping list on magnetic whiteboard. And then before you go to the store, you take a picture of the list with your camera, with your phone. And then when you go to the store, you have the list. And it's a very efficient system. And I was reading through the list to see what we needed. And in huge letters, the list did say, apocalypse. And I thought, how can we have to pick up an apocalypse. I decided that it must be a brand of wine. And I could only assume that it was a brand of extremely cheap and horrifying wine with a very high alcohol content. And then I asked my family and they said, did you not read what comes above it? And it said, stock up for the apocalypse, because the weather people were predicting a massive snowfall on Saturday night. So it was apocalypse snow. And we got ready for it. We bought the makings of hot chocolate. We bought firewood. We bought like a cord of firewood. We bought extra blankets. We were ready for apocalypse snow. And then the day came and we waited for the snow. We were all ready to be bundled up watching the snow drift in huge piles around us. You know, Rob from Melbourne, Australia, and Karen from Florida, and Adam, who's lived most of his life in Phoenix in California, they were like into the snow. It rained some, you know. It basically turned out to be apocalypse. No apocalypse whatsoever. And the reason I'm telling you all this is that it does relate, weirdly, in a very analogical fashion, to the issue of how you create the community. We called it a village sometimes. My dear friend Boyd Vardy does fascinating work on villages, and you should go to his websites and read his blogs and go to his seminars about it. But it's basically how to create a circle of friends, or a friendship enclave, as they used to call it when I was in graduate school. And the reason it relates to snow is that I actually think the process of getting one's real heart community to sort of cohere around you is not something that you do with any kind of deliberate matchmaking forethought. It's more like something that happens in nature. It's more like a fractaling process. Now, if you don't know what fractals are, I've mentioned them before, I'm sure. All of nature is based on the creation of fractals, which are patterns based on mathematical algorithms that form naturally between the elements. And they form characteristic shapes. For example, the shape of a fern. If you put into a computer a certain algorithm and then set the computer to create a shape based on this algorithm, what it creates is almost exactly like a fern. And it's interesting because if you look at one leaf of the fern and you go deep enough into it, it turns into another whole fern, and you go into that one, it turns into another whole fern. If you could pull out, all the ferns start to coalesce into smaller ferns. And it's basically a natural pattern that reoccurs over and over, but not exactly. It's called patterned disorder. So it's supposedly chaotic. It's what happens to nature in a state of chaos, weirdly enough, but it doesn't look chaotic. It actually looks like it is the very embodiment of what we call beauty. So the way snowflakes form is kind of the way friendships form. It happens when there's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere and when it's cold enough for the moisture to freeze, the water molecules to freeze. And then there's dust, little particulates in the atmosphere. And what happens is that there'll be a little mote of dust, and then ice crystals start to form on it. And every ice crystal has one oxygen, every ice molecule, every water molecule has one oxygen and two hydrogens. It's kind of like a Mickey Mouse head. Big oxygen, and small hydrogen. Boop, boop, boop. So you see that form, it's kind of a little triangle. And what it means is that as more more water, more H2O atoms cohere to each other and freeze, they tend to form these triangular patterns that end up resulting in hexagons. So you get hundreds and hundreds of water molecules arranged in various fractals of a hexagon. So they're all alike in that they're hexagonal because of the design of the molecule, but they're all different, as we know. It really is true that you won't find two large snowflakes alike in the history of the world. That's how much variation is possible. And yet it's all kind of the same too. So the same kind of process is what I've noticed creates community. I'm going to describe it one more way because we're going to move over from snow into friendship through rock candy. See, you can make your own crystals. Just go online, look at the videos. You can make them out of salt, you can make them out of different chemicals, but the easiest one and probably the most fun is sugar. And here's what you need. Just like the atmosphere has to be full of moisture and the right temperature, you create a supersaturated solution of sugar. Wow, we have this, when there's a high wind like there is right now, there's one shutter on our house that bangs and bangs, and it's like a ghost trying to get in. So that's what you hear. Okay, you got your sugar, you get a bunch of sugar, you put in some water, you boil it. Okay, so then you got this sticky, syrupy, heavy sugar, super saturated in water. Then you take an original form, and it could be anything. It could be a little bit of, I don't know, a matchstick, a piece of string, a part of a paperclip, anything. And you suspend it so that it's dangling in the supersaturated sugar solution. So you get like a pencil, you put it over a cup of supersaturated sugar, and it's dangling down some string. And then you just leave it there. And over time, it starts to form these beautiful crystals. And if you go and look at it a few days in, you may find crystals also forming on the sides of the glass. And it says in the instructions I read, it said, take these and eat them. Which I think is the first time I've seen that in like a scientific experiment thing. And you shouldn't eat them because they're bad for you. They're delicious, but they're bad for you. So you shouldn't. No. So a little bit of something in a supersaturated solution causes things to cohere around it in a specific pattern. The moral of this whole story is that you are an original crystal in a supersaturated solution of human peoples, human society. You need the same things to create a village that you need to create rock candy, that you need to create snowflakes. You need lots and lots of the things that need to cohere, molecules of water, molecules of sugar, people. You need them to be mingling around together, and you need one thing for them all to cling to, and then you need time, okay? So this process is actually going on all the time, even if no one is cohering around you. This is why whatever coheres around you will be another version of the fractal that you've created. So, for example, if you hate everyone, you will most likely, through whatever mechanism, the vibe, I'm not sure what it is, you will most likely attract people who also hate everyone. This means you will hate each other and you won't have any friends. If you are a person who is customarily very negative, you will attract people who are very negative, and it won't be much fun to be around them. Again, no friendships. If you love everyone, like, I don't know, a golden retriever does, you will attract people who love everyone, and you will have lots and lots and lots of friends. I've watched this for years, and it always works. In fact, I don't know who originally said this, but it's really true, that if you look at the 6 or 7 people you are closest to in your life, your personality is basically a profile that matches those 6 or 7 people. So if you think about a few people that you're close to, write down all their characteristics. You've basically described your own fractal. So what this means is that if you're going to set out to create a community, you're already in a supersaturated solution. Never before in the history of the world has there been so much access to so many people who can have so much friendship, potentially, who can bond together and find each other the way you and I have found each other. So, I mean, for heaven's sake, I wrote a book, Ro read it in Australia, came across the world, and now we're here. Like, I mean, we can find each other these days, and the world is, Lord knows, super saturated with humans. Like, that's probably one of the biggest problems we have. But it can be good, right? It can be good for creating community. So you do need to wait some time, but the most important thing you need to do is make sure that the original fractal that is going to create that community is what you really want and what you really are. So I was talking to a New Age acquaintance one day, and she said, you don't attract what you think about, you attract what you actually are. So if you are sunny to everyone, but you are very passive aggressive and hateful within your heart, you will end up with a lot of those same kinds of people. And so there'll be lots of politeness on top and a lot of backbiting and nastiness underneath. If you are stoical and pretend to have no feelings, you may end up with people who approve of that, but you won't have a very deep connection because, you know, no feelings. There are also times, like if you look at an addict-codependent relationship, it's almost like codependents tend to be, people who become codependent become very, very fixated on one person. And they tend to attract people who are very fixated, but not always on a person. Sometimes it's on alcohol or drugs or some other addiction. So in a weird way, if you've ever been to an Al-Anon meeting, the codependent is as much an addict as the addict is, but the addict is addicted to a substance, and the codependent is addicted to the addict and the addict's drama and that whole way of thinking. So there's a lot of similarity, even if there's not exactly identical behavior. So the best way I know to make sure that you have good, true, and lasting relationships is, you will not be surprised, get as much integrity going as you possibly can. Know what you really know. Feel what you really feel. Say what you really mean. Or, you know, if you know that saying what you really mean would be frowned upon or get you killed or something, don't say anything in that circle. Get away from it. And do what comes from the deepest, truest knowledge of what the best next step is for you. That one's hard to describe. Byron Katie calls it knowing to do. And it just means that when you're feeling what you really feel, knowing what you really know, then the next step comes as what you want based on your truth. Now, if you do these things, you won't always say things that make everybody happy. But you will do things that make people like you be interested in you. And then you go into a nice phase. Once you've got the fractal right and you're living your real truth, you'll be drawn to your own favorite hobbies, your own favorite singers, your own favorite comedians, your own favorite books. And we live in a supersaturated solution. So you kind of come to the time of the mixtape. When you start, it used to be mixtape. When I was a kid, you had to make a mixtape with cassettes and send it to the person. What playlist? We make playlists today. But you know, you just shoot people a funny video. Somebody shoots me a video of a monkey taking burrs out of a cat's ear, and I'm like, "You are my friend forever!" And then I send that video on to other people, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" And I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, not attracting the second person, very connected to the first." And in this way, by sharing things in the by sharing our true selves in the supersaturated solution of the world today, we create beautiful crystals of community that are just like us in a very happy way. Yes, but if you do it without integrity, you attract a community without integrity. Not so good. And that's what I have to say about that. Now I am open to questions.
I'm going to sneak back in here. Nice and subtle. I have a great question right off the bat from Monica, who says, what happens with someone who pretends to love everyone, but there is control intention behind it?
You develop relationships with the same kind of people. It's really interesting. It's funny. It's hard to even describe the sort of texture or timbre of the energy that comes off that. Really, really controlling people tend to approve of each other. For example, do you remember way back a million years ago when Saturday Night Live had the church lady who was always judging people? She said, "Oh, I see you're naughty parts and gorged and tingling. Isn't that convenient?" I didn't make that up. Dana Carver did. See, and to me it was funny, and people out there are going, "Oh!" And it's just the crystal forming itself. Anyway, a lot of very, very intense religious communities where people share a judgmental attitude, they have a lot of that nasty controlling energy, and yet they feel very bonded together. The thing is, they all have to agree on one philosophy. They have to agree that there's a right and a wrong, and they're always going through the rules. You gotta, learn your catechism or whatever it is, because if you start adhering to different rules, it busts up the vibe. So you tend to get fundamentalism when that happens. Great question.
Florence just wants to add some support to Church Lady.
Isn't that special?
And I had another really good question. Oh, it's coming up really soon. Okay. Actually, this one without the typo. So Barbara says, what about if you've been invisible and don't want to be anymore? How do you attract a tribe?
Well, the interesting thing is that you have a tribe of invisible people out there. Once my whole work team was going to do the Martha Beck Summit, which was like the most frightening phrase I'd ever heard in my life. I don't summit stuff. I'd like to climb hills, but that's where it ends. And so
the next Martha Beck Summit will be held in November 2020.
It will. And I will be hiding in an upstairs room. So then at a certain point in the plans, I said, but there are a lot of introverts that are attracted to my work because I'm so introverted. You might not think so, but I actually am. And they said, oh, that's right. We weren't thinking, oh my God, we want to include the introverts. Let's have an introvert room where they can gather and connect. And I was like, great, that room will be empty because all the introverts will be hiding in their own rooms. That's where we're happy. However, if you want to connect with other introverts, it's really, really useful to have the internet. I mean, I know I harp on this because we're using it now, but I got to tell you, I've had more clients and more friends and family members even who have met other shy people online than you could count, even if you took both your shoes off and used your toes. There are lots of gentle ways now that people can sort of poke out a toe and go, I like this joke. You know, I think this is really funny. Do you like it too? And I don't think they'd mind if I said this. My wonderful daughter and her wonderful partner met that way. And they're both so creative, so brilliant, and really very introverted. And from America to England, they found each other. And now they're married. And they never had to stop being shy. Yeah.
Okay, Melissa says, I can't change who I am, and I'm timid with the relationships with others, but I crave that. But I can't change who I am, so where does that leave me? I feel like I'm out of integrity.
If you feel like you're out of integrity, look at why. If you feel like you're holding back because you just don't have the courage to do what you really, really know to do, that is out of integrity. At a certain point, integrity, living as your true self, takes courage. And there's no way to make it absolutely unnecessary to use courage, because you ultimately have to be vulnerable. You have to be suspended in a supersaturated solution. And it's a vulnerable, exposed feeling. You can do it in very tiny ways, though. You can ask your heart, how do you feel like you want to reach out? And if that means, you know, starting to put pictures of things you love on Instagram and see who shows up, then that's a really low-risk way to do it. If you want to start going places, that's a really big step. I wouldn't go anywhere unless you're an extrovert. So if you're timid, just no. Just make playlists for other people and see who grabs it. Seriously, I'm serious.
She's not kidding. She would kid about something like this. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Donna, what if you feel inferior to those who you would like to be your tribe? For example, I'm in awe of some people and feel like I couldn't ever be someone they might welcome.
This again is you're putting out a crystal where you're not acknowledging your own worth. When you look at the people who feel magnetic to you and you feel like you're not good enough for that, it will not feel pleasant. That's not a good feeling. I believe that when a thought is true, it feels good. And I've seen this happen over and over, that people run into trouble because they hold the lie of their own inferiority. And then they can't match the people that are trying to connect with them energetically, whether they all know it or not. And the classic story of this is the Ugly Duckling, where the swan, the cygnet, the baby swan, is running around getting pecked to death by ducks and thinking, I just want to be accepted. How can I be more like you? I just want to be like a duck. And he grows up without knowing it. And one day he sees these gorgeous swans flying, and he looks up and he says, his whole being wants to be there. It's very different from how he felt about the ducks. The ducks, he just wanted acceptance and couldn't understand why everybody hated him. When he sees the swans, his whole heart longs to be with them. And when they come, they see him and they settle on the water in front of him, and he hangs his head in shame. And they say, why are you alone? Why aren't you with us? And he's like, oh, I could never even talk to such beautiful beings. And as he looks down in the water, he sees that the reflection of his own form is the same as the reflection of their forms. And he has to accept the fact that that's what he is. You're just going to have to get used to being a swan. And that's part of coming into integrity. No inferiority complexes. They don't work.
And you so are, Donna. So Iris.
Yeah.
All right. Laurie says, I feel like I'm always the one reaching out to friends, and I would like to find friends who reach out to me. How do I go about that?
You can stop reaching out when you don't want to, because that attracts people who rely on you to reach out for them. And if you stop doing that, you sometimes go through, it's like you've got the wrong crystal basis for the people that have aggregated around you, and you want to make something that's a clearer, more beautiful crystal, and you have to kind of start over again. You have to say, I'm going to be more true to myself. And that means that when I'm alone, when I'm just suspended there, vulnerable, and remember I said the third ingredient, there was the supersaturated solution, the original form on which the crystal coheres, and time. When you start over again, when you realize, oh, I've been out of integrity, I've been just hanging out with people who rely on me to do all the work of the relationship, and I do not like it. So doing something I do not like is out of integrity. So I'm going to get back in my integrity. I'm going to check to see if I really want to do something, and I'm going to keep connecting, keep showing up to see who's on Facebook, to see who's, emailing each other, emailing me, and I am going to hold a behavioral pattern that feels good to me and wait. Hold and wait. And one of the problems people have is that they slip into an old pattern and just get the same pattern going all over again. Because that period of waiting for the new crystal to form can be very frightening. And in that period of time, we tell ourselves it's never going to happen. I'm never going to have true love. I'm never going to have true friendship. I will have no village. It's easy to panic. Panic is the enemy of integrity. Hang in there. Keep showing up various places. Keep being the real self. And I promise you, the crystal has to form. That's a scientific fact that I made up.
Jerry asks, what if you have changed to the person you want to be? How do you know for sure the person you've attracted is the new you or the old you? You, no.
That's an interesting time. Yeah, so you've changed, and then the person that you're with, that you got with, whether it's a partner or a friend or whatever, the person that you were with was connected to the person you used to be, and now you're different. So what happens then? What happens then is that the old fractal tends to break apart. So, for example, if I were still hanging out with devoutly religious people in a certain tradition, the fact that I am a flagrant and unapologetic lesbian would not, yes, isn't that special, probably wouldn't get me a lot of close friendships. So yeah, there are these tension points if you do change to become more in integrity, and this is part of the integrity cleanse. You change what's inside so that you know what's true for you. Then you start changing the actions based upon the thoughts in your head. Now they're different. You don't believe the same things. And the people who used to believe what you used to believe then have to face a choice. They will either say, that's very interesting. I'm inclined to go do my own research and see if I might go through the same set of changes. Or they say, no can do. I don't need your stinking weirdness. You go away. And there will be conflict, and there may be separation. There will always be love. But there may be some separation as people's fractals just differ. And it doesn't mean anybody's evil.
I want to just clarify, because I think what Jerry was asking was, you've made the change, you've attracted someone. Are they in the new fractal or are they in the old fractal? How can you tell?
Because if they're in the old fractal and you keep being yourself, they'll get upset. Always. And they may hide it or whatever, but you can feel it. We can all feel interpersonal dynamics. And if you're with someone who doesn't match your fractal and you are living in integrity, they will not cohere. They just won't. It's against the laws of nature that I just made up.
Hooray! I've got a few things that I really want to quickly grab before we finish up. Alison just wanted to know when the Integrity Cleanse book will be available.
I don't know. My agent is shopping it around this next few weeks. So
we will see. My fave, Carol Bonneville, says, when horses neigh, they're saying, here I am, where are you? Don't be afraid to neigh. Use the magic of nature.
That's true. And that's what I always, Carol, wonderful. And when birds sing, they're basically just going, hello, are you there? And another bird, hello, are you there? All morning long. We can do it too.
Can I get it through a couple more?
Yeah, why not?
Lisa Joy Goodman says, I love this so much. I truly feel the tribe in the Wayfinder coach training, which is wonderful. But I also just wanted to say how awesome you guys are, and that every time I see you replying to each other and really forming the tribe here and the circle, Gimme makes me so happy.
That's what Adam says. Gimme makes me so happy. We don't know why he throws gimme in there, but now we all do it. Gimme makes me happy.
So good on you.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I love to see that. Anything else before we finish?
No, we're good.
All right, so just remember, we live in a supersaturated solution. If you want close heart friends, first become yourself and then allow yourself to be suspended and waiting until you start to find people cohering with you. And this right here, right now, is exactly a demonstration of that process. We are all a big hunk of rock candy hanging out in the universe, loving each other.
Loving each other.
So I will see you next week. Love those topics. Go ahead and propose them. And we may talk about your topic next week on the Gathering Room.